Fallout 3 is the biggest pile of shit. It's kind of what I expected to say 17 years after its release. You'd expect Fallout 3 to feel outdated or difficult to return to, but revisiting in 2025 surprised me in a good way. The last time I played it was back on the PS3, so coming back on the PC after all these years made the opening moments feel fresh in a way I didn't expect.
Seems like only yesterday that your daddy came.
The first thing that stood out was how dark and grimy the world looks. Fallout 3 commits to the post-apocalyptic atmosphere with confidence. The lighting, the tone, the environmental detail, it all comes together to create a world that feels harsh and immediately immersive. The opening half an hour sets up the story with a clear sense of purpose, easing you into the world whilst giving you enough intrigue to push forward. The way the character creation and early skill allocation are woven into the opening sequence still works incredibly well, and it feels natural rather than mechanical. The opening is actually stronger than I remember. It's a smooth, well-paced introduction that helps you build out your character without ever slipping into endless menus. Fallout 3, New Vegas, and even Fallout 4 share this strength. They all find a way to establish your character and their place in the world without breaking immersion too much. There are things we'll talk about later on that don't hold up quite as well, but the structure of the introduction is still a high point. Having said that, you do notice the game's age quite quickly. Anyone coming straight from Fallout 4 will see the limits of the character creation and the dated visuals almost immediately. Once you settle into the idea that Fallout 3 is a product of its time, or a classic, depending on how you look at it, those rough edges become easier to accept. Beneath them is a story with a strong foundation and a world that still knows how to draw you in. Whilst this isn't a review built around comparing Fallout 3 to the games that come after it, there'll be natural moments where those comparisons do come up. It's part of looking back at a game that's helped shape a genre and part of understanding how it holds up today. I won't go too deep into every plot beat, but the broad strokes still work. You're born, you lose your mother, you grow up under pressure, your dad suddenly disappears, and eventually you leave the vault yourself. That journey leads you into the larger conflict around Project Purity, choices that affect the future of the Wasteland, and if you want to push it, one very destructive red button sitting in the middle of a broken world. The heart of the story, especially Project Purity, still holds up. It's built on a simple idea. Access to clean water can be the difference between rebuilding a society and watching it fall apart. For those of us living in relative comfort, it's easy to take for granted. Fallout 3 forces you to sit in that reality inside a world that has completely collapsed, and that gives the narrative real weight even today. When I first played it, Broken Steel wasn't quite out yet, so the ending was abrupt and final. Being able to continue the adventure now feels natural. It lets you wrap up side content that you missed the first time and gives space for the DLC to slot in more meaningfully. As I'm writing this, I'm still working through the add-ons, so I genuinely like to know what you think of Anchorage, the Pit, Point Lookout, and the Mothership Zeta. I've heard very good things. Something I missed years ago, but appreciate far more today, is how disturbing the vaults really are. Back then being my first step into the Wasteland, they're presented as safe havens, complete with tidy hallways and cheerful posters, but almost every vault is its own psychological experiment gone wrong. They're controlling the environments designed to fail in specific ways, and revisiting them now makes the world building feel even richer. The TV series highlighted this brilliantly, which in turn makes returning to the game even more interesting. As for what doesn't land anymore, some of the voice acting and dialogue can feel rough, and a few character stereotypes haven't aged gracefully. But even the stranger side quests still have their charm. Fallout has always embraced the bizarre, and somehow it still works. Compared to modern RPGs, the structure is simpler and the tools are older, but the storytelling still carries a sense of scale and sincerity that newer games sometimes miss. Even with dated mechanics, Fallout 3 remains engaging because the world, choices, and the themes are strong enough to outlast the technology around them. If you're enjoying this review so far, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps keep these videos coming. Thank you! When looking back at Fallout 3, it helps to keep in mind the context of when it was made. The technology and the designs of 2008 are very different from today, and that perspective can make a big difference in how the mechanics feel. That said, some aspects of the game do show their age, even when others remain surprisingly functional. The most noticeable elements that feel dated today are the enemy AI and the leveling system. Enemies often behave very predictably, charging at you with little tactical thought. It's not broken, but it's a far cry from the more reactive, strategic AI that you might expect in modern RPGs. The leveling system can also feel intrusive. When you reach a new level, the game interrupts your flow with a large menu for point allocation and a long, sometimes overwhelming list of perks. Compared to a streamlined special and perk system in Fallout 4, it can feel cumbersome. Navigation through the Pip-Boy, whilst intuitive for the most part, the map controls do take some getting used to. Zooming and scrolling around the map can be awkward, and it's easy to accidentally jump to the next page. It's functional, but it doesn't feel as intuitive as later titles. Beyond that, of course, there are bugs that Bethesda games are known for, though nothing completely game-breaking in my experience. Maybe I'm just used to the charm of Bethesda. Despite these age-related quirks, several mechanics still hold up well. The Pip-Boy integration remains solid, the inventory, the stat screen, and the quest tracking are all managed in a way that doesn't break immersion. In some ways, its simplicity makes navigating the Pip-Boy feel smoother than Fallout 4. Maybe this is just running the old title on modern hardware that makes the fluidity of the modern title feel slower in comparison. As for the moment-to-moment gameplay, it's a mixed bag. The gunplay isn't particularly deep or satisfying. It gets the job done without standing out, but the game excels in its exploration and interaction. Talking to NPCs, discovering location, and advancing the story remains enjoyable. Where it all falls short compared to the later titles is the looting and side activities, which doesn't feel meaningful beyond gathering ammo and health items. Overall, while some mechanics are dated, Fallout 3 still provides a solid, immersive experience. One of the questions I came into Fallout 3 with was whether my choices still felt meaningful. The narrative is largely linear, but there are key moments that genuinely shape how the story unfolds. The ending, particularly at the end of Jefferson Memorial, is a good example. You're faced with a life or death decision around the Purifier, deciding whether to step in yourself, send a companion, or walk away entirely. Each choice changes how the conclusion is framed. Whether you're seen as self-sacrificing, morally complex, or absent-mindedly responsible for failure, even smaller decisions throughout the game subtly influence the narrator's final commentary, reflecting on the kind of person you've become while traveling the Capital Wasteland. In that sense, the ending feels like a mirror for your journey. Do the consequences hold up today? Largely, yes. The karma system feels a little dated, and I can see why it was phased out in later games. But it still gives weight to your actions. Simple choices, like whether to detonate a nuclear device, carry obvious and meaningful consequences. The factions in Fallout 3 don't have any significant impact on the main story, as some later RPGs, but they do still add depth and texture to the world. Aligning with certain groups unlocks dialogue options and provide context for the broader apocalyptic society, even if it doesn't dramatically alter the plot. Fallout 3 prioritizes your personal decisions over political allegiances, which helps the world feel responsive in a way that is more about your character than your team allegiance. Overall, the game's approach to choice and consequences may not be as complex as some modern RPGs, but it still gives the player a real sense of agency, and that holds up remarkably well even 17 years later. Where does Fallout 3 sit for me now in the series, and what sticks out for me the most? Even the occasional bugs and quirks, which have become part of the Fallout experience, the story still resonates. It's compelling, well-structured, and immersive. While it's slightly more linear than some later entries, that doesn't take away from the enjoyment. The world building and that sense of exploring a post-apocalyptic Washington DC remains incredibly strong. Is it still worth playing today? Absolutely. One of the biggest improvements since my first playthrough is the ability to continue exploring and completing quests after finishing the main story. That freedom adds depth and lets you explore more of what the Capital Wasteland has to offer. Revisiting the game now gave me a fuller, richer experience than I had back on the PS3, and in many ways, it enhanced my appreciation for what Fallout 3 achieves as a world and a narrative. For a 2025 rating, I'd give Fallout 3 a 3 out of 5. The story still lands, the world building is exceptional, showcasing Bethesda's talent for creating engaging RPG environments. However, some mechanics do feel dated. Enemy AI can be overly predictable, and the leveling system and menu navigation show their age. Ultimately, Fallout 3 remains a classic for its atmosphere, narrative, and exploration, even if it's not the most polished by modern standards. And that's my review on Fallout 3. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Fallout 3. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth video game reviews.